On the clover leaf. The Master of Underground Bridges certificate lay on the desk, its golden letters glimmering in the afternoon sun. Bardo ran her hand over it once again, feeling a strange emptiness instead of pride. 16 years of study, 7 years of leading underground paths, dozens of checked-off places, and several large abandoned anthills left behind in hopes of building a new life. And what now? She asked herself, looking at the organized shelves full of awards, diplomas, and photos from ceremonial receptions. A train ticket lay right next to the certificate. Destination: Island of Cosmic Gardens. One-way ticket. Bardo picked it up and for the first time in years felt that her beating heart no longer quickened with the excitement guaranteed by change. A moment later, she put it back, went out onto the house terrace and realized that she lacked space to breathe and be herself without titles, certificates, and plans for the future. Childlike joy had been replaced by reluctance. Curiosity and the desire to explore had given way to mechanically checking off successive points on life's map. Everything that once brought her pleasure now seemed grey and devoid of essence, like withered leaves after the first frosts. When was the last time she spontaneously marveled at something so much that she forgot about time? When did she start counting days instead of living them? When was the last time she laughed so loudly that her stomach hurt? And when was the last time she did something just because she felt like it? And right at a moment, it occurred to her that maybe she could... "Hello, Bardo! Look what I have!" The ladybug announced euphorically, waving a pink box in front of the ant's nose. Inside were little folks placed in compartments resembling rooms. A hair salon with mini chairs and mirrors. A cozy living room with tiny sofas and tables. A swimming pool, stairs, and a library full of books the size of snowflakes. The ant looked up, and a cold shiver ran through her entire body. For the first time in a long, really long time, she saw the ladybug. She didn't just see her, but truly saw her, as if a completely new figure had emerged before her, though one she had known since the very beginning of her existence. And with coldness in her voice, being like an extension of what was in her body, she replied, "So what?" The last drops of patience evaporated from Betsy like dew in the morning sun. A great fire ignited within her. Her heart became hard as a nutshell, and she had the feeling that someone had just placed a pile of large, heavy stones on her chest. "I don't like you. You only think about yourself. A week ago, you answered me the same way," cried the ladybug through tears. "So what? So what?" She imitated the ant's movements. "What? That's what! You can't do this! By closing doors to the world, you hurt everyone who wants to help you. And most importantly, you close them to yourself." the sound of the door slamming echoed sharply. Betsy stood motionless for a moment, feeling her breathing quicken even more. Yes, she was satisfied with herself because the previous gentle approach to the ant had brought no results, and she too had her feelings. For so many days she had tried to be patient and understanding, believing that learned reactions from the past don't have to triumph over here and now. And nothing came of it. She sighed, hearing in her head the words that Bardo had been repeating lately like a mantra. A sense of disappointment and sadness settled within her like heavy gray clouds before a storm. All the wise thoughts, read books and guides on how to build friendship went to waste, and Betsy felt that a long, starless night was falling in her heart. And as if to confirm her feelings, the sky suddenly took on colors of deep, almost black hue, and not so far away could be heard great rumbling from the sky. "Storm! Lightning!" cried the ladybug and quickly ran towards home. But she ran so fast that she could no longer hear the voice that rang out truly not much later. "Betsy! Betsy!" The ants began calling, carrying the colorful box of little folks, which simultaneously with a loud, mighty thunder crashed to the ground, opened up, and all the figurines fell out, getting lost in the thick grass. What now?" the ant said with embarrassment, and when she placed her hand on a small pink figure with an umbrella to pull it out from among the clover leaves, a flash in the sky cut through the air like a golden arrow, and an invisible force pulled her into the clover, shrinking Bardo to the size of little fox. The enormous clover leaf pulsed with life like no other place she had ever known. A narrow path led to the nooks and crannies of a plant, as if hiding its inhabitants from the daily rush and worries of the big world. Time and again, silhouettes could be seen connecting with an almost invisible thread, darting among little houses, winding through daisy paths, small bridges, flower gardens, shops, swings, and other various wonders of this miniatured world. Children's laughter mixed with warm conversation of adults, and the air was filled with the aroma of fresh mint, soothing lavender, and subtle notes of jasmine. "What's that?" thought Bardo, heading towards something resembling a fanfare. "Welcome, welcome!" called out a joyful voice. "First time here?" Yes, stammered Bardo, still unable to believe what she was saying. "Wonderful!" He clapped his hands. "Our family has been running this place for generations. Please make yourself comfortable on our carousel." But I don't... Can I... Bardo began uncertainly, but before she finished the sentence, she was already sitting in a small gondola made of sunflower petals, which began to slowly spin to the rhythm of a joyful melody floating throughout the fanfare. "Even a small stone can stop a great wave," called out a delicate little girl from below, gathering stones from the ground. "Do you remember?" But Bardo couldn't focus on these words because the gondola was rising and falling like on a wave. And around her swirled a colorful world, full of laughter and music. The ant felt how, for the first time in months, something was tickling her strongly from within. So strongly that tears of happiness began to flow down her cheek. And when the carousel stopped, she felt a gentle push toward narrow, silver-gleaming water and somehow found herself on a small wooden boat. "Welcome to the bakery on water," said a calm, melodious voice. "That's our brother," shouted a little girl, waving goodbye. "Please sail slowly," she added. The wooden boat, full of baskets of fresh herbs and loaves of bread the size of walnuts, drifted playfully ahead. Bardo kept trying to discover the scent of delicacies being brought to tables with guests. But she was so busy looking at everything around her and experiencing this new world that the names mixed together like scattered puzzle pieces. A meal begins with scent. Read the inscription in the middle of a boat. But when can you feel it when you eat so quickly and often in solitude up there on earth? Added the waitress, handing the ant a cinnamon roll. Bardo took it in her hand and instead of immediately biting it, she gently brought it to her nose. The aroma was intense and warm. Breathing it in, Bardo remembered the ladybug. She had often seen how Betsy would close her eyes while eating, as if listening to some music. She also felt a sting in her heart. How many shared meals had she missed, eating hastily over papers? How many times did Betsy's strange behaviors contain wisdom that she had so ignored? For the first time in months, she longed for her and promised herself that as soon as she returned, she would apologize and find time to discover this world together anew. Truth finds its way back to us in its own way, added the waitress, looking tenderly at the ant, and soon after, the boat stopped before a brown, tall sign. Third Clover Leaf. "Go, go! You can't get lost here," said one of the guests, pushing Bardo ahead. The third clover leaf looked strange. The houses had cracked walls, beautifully decorated with golden threads. The paths were uneven, though seemingly made of velvet, and some things around simply lay broken but arranged in one neat row. Despite this, everything had some strange charm about it. "I don't understand," said Bardo, picking up a cracked plate that gleamed with gold in the places of cracks. "Why doesn't anyone fix these things?" "Cracks are our stories. Without them, we would be boring and identical like all those shining certificates," said the boy as if reading the ant's mind. "Striving for perfection and hiding our weaknesses takes away our authenticity and joy from what is. And this is my favorite plate," he added, looking at the ant. "It reminds me of when you dropped in the garden. Please take it and carry it to the fourth clover leaf. Have fun!" He giggled briefly, and as if nothing had happened, disappeared behind wild rose bushes. Bardo stood with a plate in her hand like a statue, trying to piece together everything she had just experienced. Night was slowly falling, which didn't promise quick sleep. Maybe it was because of a feeling as if someone had just opened a window and let in fresh air after months of stuffiness. And maybe because for a long time the aunt hadn't felt such pulsing life in her body as now, here, on the clover leaves, wishing the state would last forever. However, her body demanded rest, and her drooping eyelids grew heavier and heavier, closing despite her mind's resistance. But where could I sleep here? Bardo sighed with her last strength. And where is this fourth clover leaf? She looked around, feeling that everything was becoming more and more interesting. Maybe I should stay here longer? She thought. But when the last of the lights in the miniature town went out, a flash in the sky cut through the air like a golden arrow, and an invisible force returned Bardo to the terrace of her small, cozy house. Bardo resumed her natural size. The sun-warmed day caused her desire for sleep to disappear as if by magic wand. Bardo directed her first steps toward the ticket lying next to the certificate and tore it into 1,000 pieces. And before her mind could piece together everything that had happened recently, a familiar voice rang out. "Hi, Bardo. I came back for the little folks' house," said Betsy, glancing furtively at Bardo. "And actually, I wasn't sure when you'd return, so I thought I'd mow your garden because everyone says that grass scares with some flashes at night," she said, lowering her voice. I mean, I don't believe them, but I didn't want you to get lost in that thicket of grass." "You mowed the grass?" asked Bardo in disbelief, looking behind her. "But where? Thank you, Ladybug. Thank you," she replied after a moment, catching her breath. "You helped me so much. This really... Thank you." A short silence fell. Silence that made Bardo realize that all this time, when she felt lonely, she wasn't alone. That warmth can be found even in the simplest gestures, and that journeys are sometimes worth starting by returning to what we have right next to us. Silence, broken by a joyful, "Oh, look at it!" cried Betsy. This is the plate from our little folks' saloon. Just a bit cracked," she marveled, stroking it with her finger. "Oh, but that's nothing. Nothing. Because now it's even more special." you.